Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to A Valid Answer with Scott and Marshall. That's right. We have, I got to hit the transition here so we can see our names. We have the why do I always forget, the socialist, liberal, atheist, and the capitalist, conservative pastor here every week, Sundays at 5, Mondays at 4, here to bring you not just the news, not just the superficial, not just what's on the surface, but to bring you the things that are deeper, to bring you the things that really you should be thinking about. What should they be thinking about?
Well, today I'm thinking they need to be thinking about the Obamacare ruling and health insurance.
Health insurance, like free health care for all.
That's what I think we should have.
Oh my gosh.
Every human being should have free health care, and especially every citizen in the United States.
Paid for by who?
Should receive free health care. Paid for, I don't care, by whoever can pay for it. They pay for it through the taxes. The people
at
will
gunpoint.
pay for it.
Okay, cool. So we rob somebody to make sure everybody else has it.
Well, given, people like Jeff Bezos with $150 billion, I'm kind of okay with that.
You're kind of okay with robbery. Okay, cool. As long as it's not you. As long as it's somebody who's making more money than you. Mm-hmm. As long as that's fine. So it's not about principle. It's about how it affects you because you're selfish in nature, right? We talked about that yesterday, right? Because you're selfish by nature?
No, I want everybody to have it, not just me.
Well, your as long as it doesn't come
We're
from...
We're going to cooperate to take it from the selfish.
Cooperate. So you're selfish and taking it from them and calling them selfish.
No, I'm gonna share it. Robin Hood here. We're gonna share with everyone. Well, anyway, let's get a little more serious about it. Let's talk about this, and get down into the ideas and the politics and really the philosophy behind this. That's the cool thing about this show, is you can watch any other podcast or any the news programs, and they'll talk about the politics, but very few really get into the philosophy, the heart of it, And
which not to go on last night's, but last night's really was. If you guys didn't see it,
very much
catch
so.
Last night's. It was really talking about the philosophy of human beings and how that affects, the economic systems and the governing systems that we have and stuff like that. But just on a deeper level, and that's where we want to take you. We want to take you deep. We want to take you below the waves. We don't want to be surfing. We want to be on a submarine. That's what we're doing.
There you go. Like your arguments were. Anyway,
Sinking,
Scott took the conservative side. I took the liberal side, and it was.
So that means I took the winning side.
Well, I don't know about that, but anyway. So a judge has struck down Obamacare's individual mandate. Now, he did not throw out the law.
Right.
He simply said that the individual mandate, which requires that every American purchase or have some sort of insurance coverage, is unconstitutional. Now, I haven't been able to find the basis or his justification for that ruling. It could be that there's really nothing in the Constitution that says you should be compelled to purchase a product. In other words,
that makes sense.
It's. I think the argument is something along the lines of the government cannot force you under the powers in the Constitution to buy something or to consume something.
And you lament that?
Well, they actually do all the time. They actually, you're required to buy insurance. For example, here in California, at least, you have to have car insurance before you can drive.
No, only if you have a car.
Well, right, if you have a car.
Just for existence.
Well,
not just for being here. Mm-hmm. It's only that's tied to if you want to buy a car. If you don't want to buy a car, you don't have to buy the insurance.
So is that how they get around it?
Well, I
guess so. Okay.
Because now it's not a constitutional thing. It's not about being. It's not about you simply have to do this. It's if you want to buy this, if you want to purchase and operate this, then you have to pay what goes along with it.
But I really think we should just simplify the system. And Republicans have said they've got better ideas, but I'm yet to see those ideas. Republicans have had control of the House, the Senate, and the White House for over 2 years.
Well, maybe their idea doesn't involve the government running healthcare at all.
Well, that's the catch, right? And if we go to where the government isn't involved in healthcare, then it's just a bunch of private insurers who are making health decisions based on bottom lines alone. They're not in this for charity. These health insurance companies are not charitable institutions. The government,
but they are competitive institutions, and when they compete, prices go down.
But they're not interested in covering everybody. They're going to cover the people at the top and maybe most of the people in the middle. But when you get to the lower, middle, and the bottom, they're not interested. And if you look at a person with pre-existing conditions...
Somebody will be. I mean, you have AT&T, you have all this, and you have Boost Mobile. You know what I mean? Like somebody's going to come in there and see that they can make money off of that because it's a capitalist nation. It's a capitalist idea. They're going to see that they can make money off of this demographic that everybody else is ignoring. They're going to come in and they're going to make money and provide the service that these people need. That's what business does.
Well, first of all,
it's not going to go undone.
They're not there right now, and they were never there before. So I'm not going to hold my breath and waiting for these mythical, low-value, low-cost insurers to enter the market. They're just not there. And when you have like a pre-existing condition, or if you develop a terrible illness, it could be any kind of illness that literally requires hundreds of thousands of dollars of treatment, they can simply drop you or refuse to cover you. And that isn't very humanitarian either. Again, these are not charitable enterprises. These are profit-driven enterprises.
But as I understand, if you go into a hospital, you cannot be refused.
Right, but then they hit you with so much debt that how do you do anything else in life? Your life simply stops. Remember, the United States being a capitalist nation, we run on credit. Your credit score determines, if you can buy a house, if you can buy a car, and all of that. So now you take away a person's ability to buy a house, which often acts as a store of wealth and a hedge for retirement, a fund for retirement and so on. You take away a person's ability to buy a decent car, at least a new car. They might be able to get a lemon off the lot from, Lizard Suit Larry, But otherwise, you make life very difficult for these people. And why? Because they had an illness and had to seek treatment because they didn't want to die. You're literally offering people the option between death and all of their money.
But
that's highway robbery.
But you're talking the insurance company, if you're already on it, can't drop you if it wasn't a pre-existing condition.
Under Obamacare, they can't drop you, but prior to Obamacare, they could. And if we repeal Obamacare, there's no reason to believe they won't return to dropping patients on which they take a loss. Again, this is about profit. It is not about taking care of people. So,
but it's still the same thing when it's run by government. It's not about taking care of people.
Well, why not though? If the government is run by the people and the people demand of the government a healthcare system that takes care of them, the people are literally serving themselves. That's how government should run, but that is not how our government runs, because we have a socialist government that is socialist only for the rich, and it's rugged individualism for everybody else. We do not have a capitalist government. We don't have a free government that represents the people. And that is why I don't trust the government any more than you do to actually solve this problem, which is why the heart of everything is to reform the government. So
why do you trust them to run healthcare if you can't even trust them to solve the problem?
Because we have to reform the government.
I would never trust government to run healthcare, ever.
Well, a lot of people have decent insurance in other countries. They have decent healthcare. They have lower costs and better outcomes than they have here in the United States. The United States pays more than any other nation for healthcare, yet our life expectancy is lower than at least more than a dozen or even 20 or something other nations. I know a report came out last week on that very topic, and I did not get a chance to read it. I only saw a couple of headlines, but it was scary. We're certainly not in the top 10. And so when you take a look at the costs that we pay and the value that we receive, it doesn't add up. It's bad. It's very bad.
So in your perfect world, how does it work?
Well, in my perfect world, everybody has free insurance provided by the government.
But define that.
Well, by free means it's taxpayer subsidized, right?
Right, but what's it include?
It includes all your treatment. Whatever you need, everything. It's comprehensive. So mental health care, physical health care, any kind of illness that you have.
At no cost to you?
Ever. Now, you do pay through your taxes. But, so a middle-class person might pay a couple $100 more in taxes every month. However, when you offset the premiums that they're no longer having to pay,
so what about the grand majority of people, all those people who aren't paying taxes at all?
They still get free health care. They're human beings and they deserve it.
Okay, so all of their health choices we have to pay for. All their bad choices we have to pay for, they don't.
Under my system, technically, yes. Now, you could
How is that fair? How is that just? Forget fairness. How is that just?
I would be on board with some kind of an exception, where if a person is a chronic drug user, if they are literally harming themselves because of their choices, where the government and the taxpayers are exempted from paying those costs, where they have.
So then you would let them die.
But ultimately, if you're okay with choices that you make that are not the result of some sort of a mental illness, if you're just simply choosing to, kill yourself through smoking or using drugs or what have you, I agree with you. It is not particularly just to make you and I pick up that tab.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay.
I have an issue with that myself.
So you don't have a problem with letting people die without health care?
I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So if it's one or the other, I'm going to include them and pay for them anyway. So now if we can devise a system where we can surgically say, well, you have a demonstrated pattern of drug abuse, and you're not going to the rehab, you're not doing anything to change your life, you keep making this decision over and over, we're done. We are no longer going to pay these costs.
Wouldn't that be disproportionate? Wouldn't that be biased and disproportionate towards the poor, who naturally are going to be those people who have those tendencies?
Ultimately, I want to fix the world altogether so that we don't have this problem where the poor tend to make these choices. And you do that by providing more fulfilling work, better wages, better housing conditions, better schools, all of these other things, right? I want to work towards the utopian ideal. I know we'll never reach it, but I certainly don't think the status quo is acceptable. I agree, yes, the poor tend to fall into this, but I don't think it's biased because these are choices that people are making to do self-harm.
Because you sound like a conservative right now.
Maybe I do, because I'm talking about choices. And yes, people do make choices.
And there's consequences for those choices.
Yes, and I agree with that. I absolutely agree. And I don't think that you and I should have to pay the tab for that. But I think that's a small percentage of cases. And I'm talking really about the person who gets sick, or the person who gets cancer or some other illness, God forbid. I don't want people to be bankrupted. I think it's something like a third to half of all bankruptcies are the result of medical debt. And you have people posting their bills online on Facebook or Instagram where, they had some little, one guy, he got bit by a snake and he was charged somewhere well over $200,000 for the antivenom, and that's insane. This is more than a person would make in 5 or 6 years of working.
But why is it so expensive?
Well, I think part of it is because it's profit-driven. There are people whose entire purpose in the industry is to simply make as much money as they can. You look at the pharma bro, right? Martin Ceccarelli, who I think he's in prison now.
Yeah.
But, he hiked up the price of the whatever drug it was, I think the EpiPen thing or whatever, hiked it up because he could. And you literally have some shocking statements from people in the pharmaceutical industry saying they have an obligation, a fiduciary responsibility to shareholders to maximize their value. In other words, I have a responsibility under my job duties to charge as much money as the market will bear, even if it means some people aren't going to get the medication and will die, so that I can return maximum value to shareholders. That is an insane way of thinking. And I think even as a Christian, you would agree. It's greed, or what's the word under 7 deadly sins?
Which is not in the Bible anyway, but
but one of the deadly sins is it's essentially greed, but there's a more technical term for it.
But again, isn't that what a business should do, or are there certain businesses that should not be allowed to do that?
I don't have an issue with a business seeking profit. I think that is what businesses should do, but within reason. And that's where it comes in. If your business practices harm others, because prevent others from access, I don't think healthcare should be for profit.
That's what I was going to get at. Is because once you start saying, business should do that within reason. Now you're getting into, now that's just subjective. Now somebody gets to say, well, then this is within reason and that's not. And instead of doing that, what if the solution was that healthcare had to be a nonprofit?
And that's the way it used to be back in the day, as I understand. And you literally had, for example, Catholic hospitals and other Seventh-day Adventists and other churches had hospitals.
Almost every hospital here in town is owned by a religious organization, yes? Other than KMC.
At one time, it no longer is the case. Your Catholic hospitals here in town are actually now a private corporation. I think it's called Catholic Healthcare West. No, it's Dignity Health.
Dignity Health was Catholic Healthcare West. So it's
and
no
before
longer...
that, it was church-run. So
Dignity Health is no longer a nonprofit?
Correct. It is a private organization. Now, they do have 1 or 2 religious persons on the board of directors, but
it's no longer Catholic Healthcare. It wasn't just a rename.
Correct. It's more than just a rebrand. They've secularized the hospital. They have 1 or 2 token, like a nun or somebody on the board of directors. But the decisions that are being made are now profit-driven decisions. Now, from my own experience, I know that Memorial Hospital, which is here in town, which is used to be a Catholic hospital,
I was born there.
I as well, still has a religious order affiliated with it, and you can apply for charity from that order. I don't know how much charity they hand out.
Adventist Health is still Seventh-day Adventist?
I believe so.
Yep.
And probably the best hospital in town, as far as I hear from everybody. My son was born there.
Oh, cool.
And so, I had a good experience there. But ultimately,
my daughter was born there. So yeah.
I don't think people should have to beg for alms in order to get health care. I don't think.
Well, they always have through history. What's wrong with that? Sorry.
Yeah, I know, right? I don't think people should have to apply for charity to have their health care expenses covered. I think as a human being, you are entitled to health care. Ultimately, if you need it for survival, it should not be sold for profit, and you should be entitled to it.
Okay, so you're saying contractors cannot make a profit for building houses?
If you need it for survival, it should not be sold for profit. So in other words, I'm not saying that you can't make a profit building houses. You sure can, but there should be free housing available for people who can't afford to buy a house.
So how do you separate that?
Well,
you have to have a different contracting license, one that's nonprofit and one that's for profit?
No, you're still going to get paid for building houses. I'm just saying that you as the end user you have a right to shelter, period.
What makes prices so high?
Well, profit has a lot to do with it, but supply and demand.
Think deeper.
Okay, well, the economic formula for how price is determined is basically supply and demand.
What's the supply?
Okay, well, supply is the quantity that's available on a market.
Okay. What about reversing that? All right? Reversing that and putting the supply on the money.
I'm not following you. The money supply is regulated. That's what the Federal Reserve does.
What I'm getting at is that you can raise your price when your customer has a large supply of money. How it's reversed.
That's what's done in the status quo. That's right now. The problem is there's no free housing for people who can't afford it.
But what I'm saying is
subsidized housing is hard to get.
Once the government gets involved and the government is the paycheck that's going to pay for it, that's when the prices go up because it has the deepest pockets and the people can build the most. That's one of the big problems that I have. One of them with the whole high-speed rail thing happening here, because it's government, not privately funded, government funded. So then you have these huge bills because, hey, the government has deep pockets. I can charge $150 for this toilet seat because they're not going to question it.
And I think that's absolutely criminal.
Right.
Even as a socialist, I think that's actually what undercuts socialism. When you have that level of corruption,
but that's what happens because it's the deepest pockets.
Should be first in line for the train to the gulag in my book.
But that's because it has the deepest pockets. When there's no competition, there's no competition for consumers.
Well, there can be competition.
You have to compete for consumers.
You get bids. The government should be, bidding out contracts and setting price controls and monitoring how the money is spent. And they say they do this all the time.
Yes.
And they don't.
Well, no.
They still end up paying $150 for a toilet seat.
But you know why? Because they can just raise the price because they have to. The government has to now do this. It was going to be $10 billion to do. Now it's $100 and something billion for the rail. Because they can just keep going up because the government's going to pay for it. They can just say, now it's going to cost this much. Now it's going to cost this much.
Well, that's why you create a federal jobs guarantee and you create a public works project where people who don't have jobs can simply go get jobs and they get better than minimum wage.
Your answer is always, well, then the government's going to supply. The government's going to supply.
Okay,
the government's going to supply.
Then if the government has a supply of labor of people who can literally pour concrete and lay down track, the government can do that itself. You don't have to hire private firms that are going to abuse the system in that way. The government, there's no reason the government can't do this
You could
itself
get the efficiency of Caltrans to build everything?
Well, again, we have to reform the system. The problem is there's all this pork and waste in the system because our politicians are fundamentally corrupt.
Because it is.
All
because
of our politicians are on the take.
The bigger the government, the more corruption there is. And your answer is always more government. No, but your answer is always more government, and the bigger the government gets, the more corruption there is.
As long as we continue to allow it, that's true.
That it'll always be allowed. There'll always be the loopholes.
It does not.
You got to shrink government. You got to shrink government. Shrink government as small as it can be to do the job that it needs to. Not just because your answer was, well, then we'll have government supply this. Well, then that causes this one. Well, then we'll have government supply that. Well, then that causes this one. But then we'll have government supply that. And your answer is always get more and more government, even though you already know more and more government is more and more problems.
No. if you reform the government itself, then you're not necessarily going to have those problems. There's two competing worldviews here. One is my world, where you have a big government, and maybe, yes, it does cost more.
And it tells you what to do.
But you get everything.
And it tells you what to do.
You have your health care. You have your mass transit.
Well, no, not if you're a smoker. You said you wouldn't allow that. They wouldn't get it.
Okay. And then on your side, you have a government
that, because that's critical. They don't get it if they don't follow your rules.
I'm trying to make a comparison here between your view and my view. And I'm saying that I would still rather have my view than your view, where we get nothing. I would rather have a big government that's wasteful, and we still at least have free health care and housing.
But even you, but again, I'm going to stop you right there. But I'm going to stop you right there, because you already said you wouldn't have it for everybody.
Okay, there's a narrow subset of people to whom I would consider denying coverage on a fairness, on a justice issue. However, I'm not going to throw out the baby with the bathwater. We can't figure out a way to fairly pass costs along to people whose choices run up the cost, then I'm just going to go ahead and include them rather than not have the system altogether, because they're a tiny percentage of the people demanding health care. I'm talking about all these people out there who are being bankrupted by massive healthcare expenses.
Your evidence of that?
What?
That it's a tiny percentage.
I don't have it. Okay. I don't have evidence right here to read into the record, because I don't know what
It's an assumption.
Well, absolutely, yes, it's an assumption.
Okay.
But the bottom line is, I would rather have a big bloated government that's expensive and inefficient.
That always works.
That at least provides healthcare, housing, and other basic needs to people.
And controls it.
If that's what it takes.
Oh my
Rather than a small, efficient government that provides nothing to people, and then
have you learned nothing from history about how a government controls people?
Have you learned nothing from history about when you don't have a government that's effective, that doesn't do things for people?
The smaller the government, the better.
No.
Yes.
No.
The smaller the government, the better. The bigger the government, the more power government has. History has shown us millions upon millions of people have been killed by their big governments.
And millions of people have been killed by no government intervention at all.
Where?
Right here in this country, people die every year from unaffordable healthcare expenses. They can't pay their healthcare expenses. They can't pay for their medication. Even with Obamacare, they die.
Mm-hmm.
It's a leading cause of death in this country. People who simply can't pay their bills. It's a leading cause of bankruptcy, homelessness, all kinds of issues that come along with that. Lives are being destroyed.
When is it natural that somebody dies?
By this capitalist idea.
When is it natural that somebody dies? Are you talking about 80, 90-year-old people who can't afford medication, so they die at 80 or 90?
Well,
is that a natural death?
No, they should not die. To me, that's murder. That's a capitalist murder.
No, you're going to compare that to tens of millions of people being actually murdered by their government. Stalin, Mao. You're going to actually compare people not being able to afford that, people not being able to afford medicine, to people being dragged in the street and shot. You're going to compare those.
How is that different from the millions, the literally tens to hundreds of millions of people who have died simply from famine and starvation because they lived under governments that refused to intervene and feed them? Take a look at the Irish potato famine. Take a look at famines in India. Look at when there was a famine in China prior to Mao, like in the 1920s, the Chinese government actually fed the people. They actually built a canal halfway across the country to ship grain and rice to people who were starving. That is how to run the system.
And what happened to that?
Well, when Mao came, it fell apart. Mao did a bad thing. He is not necessarily the model socialist.
Name a model socialist.
Well, I could probably name a few.
Because here's the thing. You keep experimenting. People like you keep experimenting with socialism at the cost of millions of lives.
Well, capitalism kills more than socialism. If we're really going to get into that debate, though, I really want to get back to healthcare.
Okay.
And I will simply contend that capitalism kills at least as many, in fact, probably way more than socialism has. But here's the thing.
But here's the thing. It's an unintended consequence instead of an intended consequence.
No, it's intentional. When you would simply allow people to die,
it's a collateral.
When you allow tens of millions, when you allow 20% of the population of Ireland to die because, hey, capitalism, you're not allowed to interfere in the market. We're going to continue to export grain and food from Ireland to the continent of Europe and let everybody die. That's a choice, and that's a bad choice. That should not be allowed. So anyway,
who was selling that?
The people who owned the land upon which it was being grown.
Who owned it?
The English did. Wealthy Englishmen, the lords of England, owned the land.
Who worked it?
the Irish people.
Why?
Because they had no other choice. Until, of course, they all died. And then it was really hard for them to have the land worked.
Mm-hmm.
But 20% of the people died. And another 20-30% immigrated mostly to America, where they were then thrown into the Mexican-American War and other places.
That's
not good,
They immigrated
That's
to
not
a better
good.
place.
Okay, but that's not a good thing that they had to leave their homes. That's not what we want. Because right now we have people trying to immigrate to America, to a better place, and you're not saying, wow, that's a good thing. You're like, we need to build a wall and keep them out.
No.
I remember a few episodes back.
Do not confuse, and don't throw me in that bus, do not confuse legal and illegal immigration, because I will take you to town on that. Okay?
The people coming here from Ireland were not welcome here either.
But they came here legally, they signed in, they came in through the proper channels.
I don't know.
Doesn't matter if they were welcomed or not. They came in through the proper channels. The boats came in, they brought them in, there was a path for citizenship through there that they followed and became
and we
citizens.
have people coming
That's
in
what
through
I'm
the
talking
proper
about.
channels south of the border. They're coming
and
to immigration points.
It takes way too long, and that needs to be reformed. It takes way too long. But don't throw me with that as saying I'm against immigrants. I came from immigrants who did it right. So
I'm not saying that you're
don't throw me into
immigrants,
that, okay?
but you're trying to cast Irish potato famine immigration as some kind of a good thing. It's a massive human tragedy. There's no way you can spin that as a good thing.
Okay,
when people are starving.
Okay, I'll go on that. I'm just saying.
Okay.
They made a better life for themselves.
Well, the ones who weren't caught up in war and enslaved basically in the factories and so on. Certainly for the people who arrived here at first, I don't think it was a better life necessarily, but at least it wasn't starvation.
And America was a socialist country at that time that they were fleeing to?
No. It was
a capitalist country. Mm-hmm. Right, exactly.
So, all right. So, where are we at on this healthcare stuff?
But we're in the same place I've always been, which is government should never be allowed to run it because you cannot trust government. Trust government to run those things. It always brings failure.
Look, to me, the status quo is untenable. And with an untenable status quo, you have to try some other way to fix it. Now, other countries have socialized healthcare systems. Every single Western industrialized nation on the planet, in fact, many other nations that don't even fit either of those categories, they're neither Western nor industrialized, they all have universal health care. Now, not every nation does, but these other countries have it, and they all universally seem to be able to provide health care more cheaply than we do because we have the most expensive system in the world, and they have longer life expectancies. Many of them do, certainly over a dozen. I ought to look that up. So given the
Why
fact...
do they still come here?
Well, they don't come here for their health care, that's for sure. You literally have Americans going to Mexico to get health care.
So for the basic stuff, but you're not going to get the best.
Cuba is kicking our butt. They have a cancer vaccine. Cuba.
Cancer vaccine.
Yes. So, who would have thunk it, right? So the bottom line for me is we have to do something. The status quo is untenable. It's profit-driven. Too many people are being bankrupted. Too many people are still dying. Too many people are having to choose between their medication and other basics like food or winter heating oil or rent or anything that makes life more bearable and meaningful. And I don't think people should face those choices. And I think if we remove the profit incentive, then right there, the costs of insurance go down, and 50% of private insurance costs is marketing. And
I could be on board with the idea that that healthcare providers should be nonprofit. I can get behind that because Josh Gunderson's on here. He said his friend went there for dental work for Mexico. I remember again on a missions trip in Mexico, one of our parishioners who was there with us slipped and broke her ankle in Mexico.
Okay.
And we took her to the Mexican hospital that was nearby. It was like a 25-minute drive or whatever. We had somebody that knew where it was, and it was some little clinic somewhere. And they took her in, x-rayed her, set it. She was a nurse. So when she broke her ankle, she knew exactly what happened. So she actually put it back herself before the shock, while she was still in shock before the pain hit, and then kept it up. They x-rayed it, made sure it was right, put a cast on it, gave her medication. She was out the door for $25.
There you go.
Yeah. But
under my system, it still cost you zero, but that's me.
But what I'm saying is the reason is that that's all you can get from the people of Mexico with no insurance. So you try to raise your prices and nobody can pay for it. So you have to keep your prices low. Whenever there's a deep pocket, then you can raise prices. Insurance companies is a deep pocket. You can raise prices. Government is an even deeper pocket. and you can raise prices. So if we keep it to nonprofit status, I think that might be a better solution. Keep it. If you make it nonprofit, you don't need the government to step in and do it, because again, the government stepping in and doing it is the worst answer. It's the worst solution.
Well, the thing is, even without government pockets or insurance, people who are uninsured are still charged these astronomical prices.
Because
they certainly can't pay.
The price is set by the insurance.
Well,
that because there's insurance, it costs this much.
The uninsured price is much higher than the insured price, I think.
No, it's simply because you have to pay the entire thing. I remember when my daughter had her surgery and I had to pay. I want to think right now, $3,500 in 1 year. I think that was
that your deductible?
That was my yearly deductible for her.
Even those are punishing. I myself have skipped doctor visits simply because of that deductible having to pay.
Yeah, and when I injured my rib, but at the same time, I'm like, there's nothing they could actually do for it. If there was something they could do for it, then I would go and do it. It would just happen to be an injury that there's all they could do is look at it and say, "Yep, it's injured. Here's some Advil." I'm like, I have Advil at home. So, I mean, I understand that portion, but what I'm saying is the price is set so high because insurances can pay for it.
So I agree. So it seems we agree that we need to get the profit out of it. Now, profit.
We just don't agree of getting the government into it.
What's that?
We just don't agree in getting the government into it.
Well, again, I think other countries are able to do this again more cheaply and with better outcomes. And given the massive size of our healthcare industry here in the United States, I don't see a reason why we can't look at other systems, look at their shortcomings, look at their successes, and build, using all the expertise we have here, build the best system ever so that it's literally the gold standard of single-payer healthcare systems. I don't see why we can't do that other than the fact that all these private insurers and all these private health and medical firms have literally purchased senators and representatives and used them to get their way.
If we take profit out of medical, though, how many
much innovation, maybe?
Yeah, well,
because
but
profit
I'm saying
tends to drive innovation, right?
How many cures have happened through for-profit companies finding a cure?
And I actually don't know, but I do know that going even back hundreds of years before medicine was a particularly profitable industry, people still labored and worked to solve these problems. I agree that people like doctors, nurses, all the way down to first responders need to be paid better. But you can do that by eliminating the profit at the top. I don't think that hedge fund managers should be getting rich off your illness. I just don't think that these middlemen, these people at the top, the insurance brokers, should not be the ones who are getting all the money. That money should be given out to the nurses, to the doctors, to the people who provide the care, the first responders. And then the savings should then be passed back to the American people.
I can't see the rest of Josh's. I want to respond to this, but I want to make sure I'm responding to the right thing.
I'll try to pull
the
up
main argument I make is Josh McGunderson saying the main argument I make for single payer is that wiping out all the redundant administration saves. I'm trying to see what that says. Oh, there you go. You got to turn your volume down, man.
Yeah, what the heck? How much tax money has gone to development of new drugs?
No, the one right before it.
From by a private entity?
The main argument that I have for single payer
is that wiping out all the redundant administration saves money. Yes, you only need one administration instead of dozens of administrations. And you don't need all the marketing, which is 15%.
When has any government entity eliminated administration?
Right? Again,
it always adds. It always adds bureaucracy.
There's no reason we can't. I mean, you could even... Well, first of all, I do think we have to reform government, period. We're not going to realize any changes until we start making reforms to the actual system that eliminate and reduce corruption and waste. That's got to come first. We cannot do anything else until we get there. So any politician who says, I'm going to eliminate corruption and waste, and here's my actual plan to do it, and I'm not on the take, someone like a Bernie Sanders or a Tulsi Gabbard perhaps, any politician who comes out to do that is going to win my support, because that's first. It's prima facie. Once you do that, then yes, you can tackle the healthcare issue.
Is healthcare, from Jeffrey, is healthcare a private good, a common resource, or a public good?
I believe it's a public good. You know, I don't want you sick either, because when you get sick, you make me sick.
But how much? How much of that healthcare? It's how much of that is covered?
I'm not sure what you're asking me.
Well, I mean, what is define healthcare?
Well, healthcare is anything needed to maintain, what we agree on as a society as good health.
Sex change?
That might be appropriate in some cases. It might come down to a panel of doctors. It's something as a society we're going to have to agree whether or not
cosmetic?
That is generally that's been frowned upon. And generally you might argue that that's a no. But again, there might be exceptions, right? If
experimental?
If a person is, well, you got to let me answer here, Scott. We're going down the list. Regarding a sex change, I think if a person needs it so that they can operate and function as a healthy, productive adult, then I would cover it. The same thing with
Who gets to determine that?
Well, it'd probably be professionals. Mental and medical health professionals would determine that. Not me, not politicians, not ideologues, actual medical professionals would make that determination. Same with cosmetic surgery. If you need the cosmetic surgery because perhaps you're disfigured or something, or you have some deformity and you want to simply be healthier psychologically and physically, and the surgery will accomplish that, then absolutely yes, I would cover that. What was your third one that you threw out there?
Experimental.
Experimental. Well, if a person...
Will there even be experimental?
Well, yeah. I don't see why there wouldn't be.
There's no profit in it.
But people are still going to do research and try to make the world a better place because people are naturally cooperative, creative, and productive, even if they are also selfish.
But the selfish motivation is gone. Why go through all the extra work if you're not going to make a profit off of it?
It doesn't mean you can't reward a person who develops something new. You can certainly reward people. Hell, even the Soviet Union rewarded people when they made scientific innovations. Scientists were literally treated as rock stars in the Soviet Union. Now, granted, that meant you got a bigger apartment, and a car maybe. It wasn't like,
Ooh, you're
here,
so kind.
right? And I think we can do a lot better than that. But I agree that we should reward people who contribute something to society that improves the quality of life of all the people.
All right. So once the government is paying for it, what say do they have in your lifestyle? If they're paying for your health care, how much say do they get to have in your lifestyle?
What say does the government have in any other country? How much say does the government of Canada have, or the government in England and the UK, France, Germany? I don't think it's significant. I don't see people in those countries complaining about their healthcare system because the government suddenly has some kind of say in their lifestyle or how they run their life. So I don't think they get any say. Their job is to preserve and protect your health, not to micromanage the choices that you make.
So living a risky lifestyle, you can live a risky lifestyle and not have to pay extra for it.
Well, that gets to the drug use thing, right?
No. I'm talking. If I want to be a stuntman, or if I want to, skydive off buildings or be a hang glider or whatever, that lifestyle choice, I get to have that now to where I'm constantly breaking my leg, constantly getting injured, constantly doing that stuff. I don't have to pay more for that.
I don't think people become stuntmen or hang glide off of cliffs or buildings to injure themselves, and I think they take safety extremely seriously.
They do, but I'm just saying it's a much more they're choosing a lifestyle that is much more dangerous. And currently, right now, a lot of times they would have to pay extra for that.
I don't know very many stuntmen or hang gliders or people who do that. And I don't think people are deliberately going to start pursuing dangerous activities. I'm not saying that they will. For their health care is going to be paid for.
I'm not saying that.
Because you can die. You can become disfigured.
No, I'm not. And that's not the argument I'm saying. I'm saying the people who are living that lifestyle, who currently are paying extra for it because it's a choice they're making, now they don't have to pay extra for it. And I have to pay for it.
And they're already doing it.
And I have to pay for it. I'm not taking any risks. Okay. I'm choosing a better life. I'm choosing these things to not take any risks, but I'm not getting any benefit for that. I still have to pay the same thing that they do.
Well, and you pay now with your private insurer. You're covering those people right now already with your private insurance, because the private insurer sure as heck isn't going to lose money. So
right, but I'm saying those people are paying more.
Well, maybe. But the bottom line is,
it's the same thing with car insurance. If I have a bigger car of the size of the car and whatever the car is, there's different prices for insurance. If I have a young teenage driver, my insurance, the more the risk, the more I have to cost, because I am choosing these risky things and I have to pay for that.
But if we take that logic
instead of me paying for it, everybody else gets to pay for it.
If we take that logic one grim step forward, that's the logic that insurers use to cut people off insurance. Oh, you've got cancer? Well, then you're done. You're off. You've got a brain tumor. Well, that's too much for us to pay, so you're off insurance. We can't do that. I think that the percentage of people who are living risky lifestyles and having to pay extra is actually very small. And at the end of the day, again,
unless you let somebody start to define what's risky.
I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I would rather those people have coverage, even if it costs a few more dollars a month out of my own personal pocket. I would rather everybody have coverage than to not give those people coverage or come up with some complex calculus that denies people coverage. I want everybody to be taken care of, even if it costs me more money.
Okay.
That's me.
So you don't believe in the consequences of people's choices. You don't believe in holding people responsible for their choices.
Consequences are inherent, okay? If you smoke, for example, and you don't quit smoking and you smoke all your life, you're going to develop inherent consequences.
Right, and then you'll go to the hospital and get taken care of for free. So what's the big deal?
You will, but you might also die. You're going to die young. That's what science tells us. So that's an inherent consequence of your choice. I'm sorry that you have to die.
It's just I'm going to cost you all this money for my choices.
But again, at the end of the day, it's just not that much money. It's just not. I'm sorry. I mean, if you can tell me what the cost of people smoking, for example, comes to in the economy, and perhaps if we had a better economy that works for the people, that has perhaps higher wages, or we have a floor beneath which we don't let people fall, fewer people will choose smoking and drugs and alcohol.
More government, bigger government answers. That's all you need is always more government.
But if we have a happier, more stable, more productive population, if we eliminate the business taxes for healthcare altogether, all of a sudden businesses suddenly don't have to provide insurance or pay healthcare penalties or anything like that. If we eliminate that, what happens to our economy? It booms. It would actually be a good thing. I don't see why people are opposed to this.
But the money has to come from somewhere.
Yeah, it does. It comes from our taxes. So instead of paying a $400 a month premium for your own personal insurance, you might contribute $200 in taxes to it. Okay. Even if, I don't know. It's just better. The bottom line is if we have a healthier population, it benefits all of us. I am willing to pay extra.
Why can't insurance just be insurance? Why does insurance have to be health care?
Well, because insurance is how we simply pay for the health care. There's no reason for why health care and insurance have to go together.
Okay, so maybe that's the change. Because see, that's where the majority of all this cost is coming from. Isn't the person who's having cancer doing this? It's the 50,000 moms who are coming in because their baby has a sniffle, and having to pay all of this stuff, and then the insurance pays all that, and the insurance pays the doctor. Because again, the insurance are the deep pockets, so they can charge all this money for check in and have a sniffle instead of like, hey. Because if my car needs tires,
the insurers are making the money, not the hospitals so much.
Right, but I'm saying if my car needs tires, it's not covered under insurance. I have to pay for my tires. If my car needs an oil change, I have to pay for my oil change. I have to pay for maintenance on my car. I have to pay for are you saying that that's owed to me? That as a human being, if I own a car, that should be, I should always have my car in tip-top shape?
Well, if you choose to have a car, then you're choosing to accept that expense. But you don't choose to live. You don't choose to be a sickly person or a healthy person necessarily. You don't choose to be born.
Why shouldn't you be responsible for maintaining your health? Why shouldn't you as an individual be responsible for maintaining your own health?
I am. And if I don't maintain my health, the consequences are inherent. I will suffer inherent consequences. So I don't need the government or somebody else to penalize me if I choose to smoke, drink, or do drugs, for example.
No, I'm saying the other way. If I choose
to drive recklessly, the consequences are inherent.
But why isn't it the maintenance of your personal health? Why isn't that your responsibility? Why are you trying to make it? No, you're saying that it's the government's responsibility.
And you're saying that private insurers have the right to bankrupt me because I choose to make a choice. You're literally advocating for insurers to have the right to bankrupt people or to let them die without coverage. Let people go bankrupt. That's crazy. No.
We have to change why the things are so expensive, not hand it over to the government.
You eliminate the profit motive, eliminate the market speculation.
Right, but don't hand it over to the government.
If there's a private way to do this, I'm all for it.
I don't believe you.
But I don't see a private way. I've not ever heard. Look, Republicans are in a golden position. They could absolutely say, we're going to get universal health care. It's going to be provided by private insurers. You get to shop, pick, and choose, and it's going to be even more affordable than the insurance you have now. And the way we do that is we eliminate the profit at the top. so that you don't have hedge fund managers making all this money. If Republicans did that, I would be all about it, all on board.
Okay.
But you would have to protect people who have pre-existing conditions. There could be no lifetime limits. And you would have to insure young people at least up until age 25 or some other, criteria that's reasonable.
Well, I mean, why is that reasonable? If this person has smoked for 80 years of their life and now they have cancer and that's a pre-existing condition, that's a pre-existing condition of their choice. Why should we have to pay for that?
Ultimately, I agree with your logic. I agree that it comes across as unjust. But if paying for that is what we have to do, if that's the cost of having a comprehensive system, I'll go ahead and pay that extra cost. If there is a way to sever those individuals out, to separate them out and put them in a certain risk pool because it's a choice that they've made, it's not I suddenly developed cancer and we don't know why,
right,
or something else, or I chose to do drugs, I would be okay with putting those people into a separate category and dealing with them however, the market wants to deal with them. But if the only way to have insurance for everybody is to include them, then we include them. I just don't want people to be bankrupted by medical expenses. I don't want people to have to choose between medicine and food. I just don't want that. People need something to survive. I think they should have it.
And every time you take responsibility away from the individual, it doesn't end up good.
Well, I don't know, because in England, Canada, France, Germany, and all these other countries, Japan, it does end up better than what we have
France
here.
is better right now?
France is having issues, and they'll have to work it out. But the bottom line is they don't have issues with their health care, not like we do. Well, I don't know what we're waiting for.
Well, this has been A Valid Answer with Scott and Marshall. Talking about healthcare. I don't know if we ever got to Obamacare or not, but talking about healthcare. You can catch us Sunday nights at 5. It's Friday. I guess we're supposed to have a Friday show. I keep trying to say Friday.
Well,
Sunday afternoons at 5.
Maybe God wants that.
For 5 o'clock keeps coming back, but Monday afternoons at 4. It's the 5 and the 4 that's throwing me off. Sunday afternoons at 5, Monday afternoons at 4. A Valid Answer with Scott and Marshall, where we go deeper than the superficial. It's really right. Good. We want to encourage you guys to have these discussions with the people around you, to not just go back and forth on whatever the news is trying to shove down your throat.
The fake news cycle.
Yeah, go deeper. Well, I appreciate everybody who was joining in with us today, Jeffrey and Josh, and people who are joining in at other times. We want to encourage you to join in the discussion as we're live on Facebook. Join us on kerncast.com. Follow Kerncast on Facebook. Also, A Valid Answer on Facebook. And until next time, we will see you then.
Thank you.